Happy holidays and welcome to Sheeran Guitar Tutorials. My name's David, and in today's lesson I'll be teaching you how Ed Sheeran plays Merry Christmas during his live performances. You'll need your guitar in standard tuning and you won't need a capo. Let's jump on in. So starting first with the chords, and just to give you a warning, if you want to play this song how Ed does it live, including that piano intro portion, there are about 20 chords in total that you need to know. But I'd say most of the song is just 4 to 5 chords, so it's really not that bad. But anyway, I'll show you all the chords you need, and then you can choose which ones you want to use. So starting first, you just have a normal C chord. Next seems to be an E7 chord, which is kind of played like this. Or this could be an E7 sharp 9 chord. Either one will work, but for this tutorial, I'll probably use the normal E7 chord. Next, you have a normal A minor, a G bar chord, an F bar chord, a C over E, which is essentially just a C, but you let that lower E string also ring out. You're not muting it this time. A D minor 7. A G7. What I'm calling a G over B. What I'm calling a C sus2 over B. An A minor 7. A G sus4, an F sus2, what I'm going to call a C prime chord. This one's a little weird, but I'm calling it a C6 add 9, a G played like this, an E major 7, played like this. In place of the E major 7, sometimes Ed will play a G sharp major 7 flat 5, which is played like this. Or he'll sometimes even just play this kind of G sharp chord. So in this tutorial, I'll be using the E major 7 chord because it seems like Ed uses that one the most. But just know that anywhere you see this E major 7 chord, you could also use that G sharp major 7 flat 5 or that mysterious kind of G sharp chord. Next is a normal G sharp bar chord. And then finally a normal A sharp bar chord. So those are all the chords, and I know there's obviously a lot of them, but based on videos I've seen of Ed playing online, it seems like he does use all those chords. So just take your time learning them all, and then join me in the next section for the strumming patterns. So we're looking at strumming patterns now, and at a high level, there are 6 in total. So looking at pattern number 1, it should sound like this. And so you may notice I have some strums in that first pattern that are bolded. That's to signal you to put a little more emphasis in each of those strums. So without the emphasized strums, pattern 1 would sound like this. But with the emphasis, it sounds like this. So the emphasis is really important to try and get the rhythm of the song right. Looking at pattern 2 now, it's similar, but has an extra down strum and has the emphasis on a couple different places. So pattern 2 should sound like this. Pattern number 3 is again similar and should sound like this. Pattern number 4 sounds like this. And then there's pattern 5, which sounds like this. And then finally pattern 6, which sounds like this. And so that's all the strumming you're going to need to know. Now let's jump into the song. So getting into the song now, we'll be starting with the first part of the intro. And so here, technically, Ed isn't playing anything on guitar. It's just the piano playing. However, because it's the piano playing, it makes it a little hard to know which chords you need. So what I have shown here is just my best guess based on what I've seen and heard in performances. What you'll be playing is fairly simple. Some of the chords are a little tricky, so that's where it can be kind of hard. But it's essentially just a single down strum for each of the chords that I have shown. So if you've gone over all the chords in the chords section of this video, you should be ready to play this part. And so because there's nothing else to it, I'll just show you how to play part 1 of the intro. Moving on to part 2 of the intro now, and this is where Ed actually comes in with the guitar. It's basically just a C, A minor 7, F sus2, G sus4 chord progression with some fun transition chords thrown in between. And a note before we start, you can see the main chord progression highlighted in yellow, and the fun transition chords are highlighted in blue and green. So if you wanted a simpler way to play this song, you could just leave out the blue and green chords and just stick to strumming the strumming patterns shown for only the yellow chords. That would work perfectly fine. So starting at the beginning, in the first block, you're going to be playing the C and the C sus2 over B chords using that first strumming pattern we went over before. So the C portion would sound like this. And the C sus2 over B would sound like this. And so you put those two parts together, and this first block would sound like this. From there, you have an A minor 7 and G sus4 block, using that second strumming pattern we went over before. So just to demonstrate this part, the A minor 7 would sound like this. And the G sus4 part would sound like this. And so everything together for this A minor 7 G sus4 block would sound like this. And so everything together for these first two blocks would sound like this. You're then playing an F sus2 and C prime, and this is played the exact same way as the A minor 7 and G sus4 pair, so this would just sound like this. So now we're on to the G sus4 portion, and you can see that the C6 add 9 and C also show up here, and you're using that third strumming pattern that we went over before. And so again, as I mentioned before, you could leave out these blue and green chords if you want an easier version and just play the shown strumming pattern for just the G sus4. That's your call. So just getting into this final block, your G sus4 would be played like this. It's then just an emphasized down strum on your C6 add 9, then another one for your normal C, and then a final down up strum on your C6 add 9. And you're going to want to try and focus on the bassier strings of these final chords, because I think what Ed is essentially trying to do is mimic the sort of final notes played on the piano, which is a G, A, C, A, and those notes happen to be the bass notes of each of the chords I just mentioned. So starting from that last down strum on the G sus4 to the end of this final block, it would sound like this. So it's just a fun little thing to play, and it seems like Ed does this during his live shows. So to play that whole last block together, it would sound like this. And so that's one time through the second part of the intro. You would then play this whole thing one more time before moving on to the rest of the song. So now I'll just show you how to play the entirety of the second half of the intro. So moving on now, and the funny part of this song is the chorus actually comes before the verse. So right after the intro, we're right into the first chorus. And I have the chorus broken into 2 parts to make it a little easier to digest on the screen. So part 1 of chorus 1 is comprised of 2 lines, and we're going to be using strumming patterns 4 and 5 here. Starting with the first block on line 1, you have your C and your C sus2 over B. For the C portion, it would sound like this. And for the C sus2 over B, it would sound like this. So altogether, this first block would sound like this. You'll also notice I have these and some other strums underlined. That's to show you that you have the option to palm mute these chords while strumming. It's something I see Ed do sometimes in his live performances. However, he doesn't do it every time, so that's why I have it as optional. So to do it, palm muting is done by laying that fleshy bit of your strumming hand kind of near the bridge of your guitar. That way when you strum, the chord sounds muffled. That's how it sounds without palm muting, and that's with palm muting. So if you were to include it for your first block that I just went over, it would sound like this. So include palm muting where I have strums underlined if you want to, but if you don't, then leave it out. Moving on now, blocks 2 and 3 are the same thing as block 1, but you're just playing the A minor 7 and G sus4 for block 2, and the F sus2 and the C prime for block 3. So block 2 would sound like this. And block 3 would sound like this. And then block 4 uses the same strumming pattern, but you're playing the whole thing on the G chord. This is actually the only time I have us using the G chord. So if you think it sounds dumb, just use the G sus4. That's up to you. It just looks like sometimes Ed uses a G chord played the way I showed you before. So regardless of the G that you use, the last block of line 1 would sound like this. So altogether, the entirety of line 1 of part 1 of chorus 1 would sound like this. Line 2 of part 1 of chorus 1 is pretty similar, but you're stopping the optional palm muting when you get to the first G sus4 chord. And now you're using strumming pattern 5 for that last G sus4 chord. So that last G sus4 block would sound like this. And the entirety of line 2 would sound like this. And all of part 1 of chorus 1 would sound like this. Part 2 of chorus 1 is actually exactly the same as part 1, except you don't use the G chord that I mentioned in the other part, because now it's officially replaced with the G sus4, and there is no palm muting this time. Other than that, everything is exactly the same as part 1 of the chorus. So the entirety of part 2 of chorus 1 would sound like this. So moving on now to verse number 1, I again have this broken into 2 parts. Starting with part 1 of verse 1, we're just playing strumming pattern 5 twice on your F sus2 chord. and then play it twice on your G sus4. So all of this first line would sound like this. Line 2 starts with playing strumming pattern 5 once on your C, then once on your C sus2 over B, and then that last block has you playing the strumming pattern about 1.5 times on your A minor 7 before finishing on the G sus4. So the A minor 7 portion of this last block sounds like this. And then the G sus4 portion is just that last down, down, up strum. So altogether, this last block would sound like this. And the entirety of line 2 would sound like this. And the entirety of part 1 of verse 1 would sound like this. On to part 2 of verse 1. It starts just like part 1 with playing strumming pattern 5 twice on your F sus2 and then twice on your G sus4. But then we get to the E major 7. And this chord change can be a little tricky, so definitely take some time to practice it. And again, as mentioned before, in place of this E major 7, Ed sometimes plays the G sharp major 7 flat 5 or that other G sharp variant. So if you like those better, play those chords here. However, I'll be playing the E major 7. Okay, so for this E major 7, it's basically just 8 down strums with a quick up strum at the end. So that just sounds like this. So this whole first line sounds like this. Line 2 starts with playing pattern 5 once on your A minor 7, once on your G sus4, twice on your F sus2, and then twice on your G sus4. All those things we've covered already. So the entirety of line 2 here would sound like this. And the entirety of part 2 of verse 1 would sound like this. So now we've made it to refrain 1, and it's just 2 lines of chords played through once. Line 1 is made up of using strumming pattern 5 once on your C, once on your C sus2 over B, once on the A minor 7, and once on the G sus4. So all of line 1 would sound like this. Line 2 starts with strumming pattern 5 once on your F sus2, once on your C prime, once on your G sus4, and then that very last chunk is that quick chord change that we did during the second part of the intro. So that last chunk is a down strum on the G sus4, a down strum on the C6 add 9, a down strum on the C, and then a down up on the C6 add 9. So the entirety of that last chunk of strumming sounds like this. And the entirety of that last G sus4 block sounds like this. And the entirety of line 2 of refrain 1 sounds like this. And the entirety of refrain 1 sounds like this. So now we're at chorus 2, and it's played the exact same way as chorus 1, so refer back to that section for the details. So now we're at verse 2, and it's played the exact same way as verse 1, so refer back to that section for the details. So now we're at refrain 2, and it's about 98% the same as refrain 1, so refer back to the refrain 1 section for most of the details. However, here I'll be going over the few differences. So first off, you go through refrain 2 twice, whereas you only went through it once for refrain 1. And the last difference is the last G sus4 block is just using strumming pattern 5 twice on just the G sus4. There aren't any C6 add 9s or Cs here. And that's it. Other than that, refrain 2 is the same as refrain 1. So the entirety of refrain 2 would sound like this. Okay, so now we've made it to the outro, and like other parts, I have this broken up into 2 sections. Part 1 is actually the exact same as refrain 2, but you're playing what I have shown a total of 3 times. So because I already went over this info, refer back to the refrain 2 and refrain 1 sections for the details on the chords and strumming here. But to play it, part 1 of the outro would sound like this. So now on to part 2 of the outro, and it's mostly the same as part 1. It starts with using strumming pattern 5 once on the C, once on the C sus2 over B, once on the A minor 7, once on the G sus4, once on the F sus2, and once on the C prime. But then you're going to do a single down strum on that G sharp bar chord. Oh, hello, Bella. Hello. Bella is here, everybody. Wishing everybody a happy holidays and teaching people guitar, apparently. Really, I think she's just hungry. Anyway, you'll do a single down strum on that G sharp bar chord we went over before. A single down strum on that A sharp bar chord we went over before. And then just a bunch of down up strums on the normal C. And that's it. So all of part 2 of the outro would sound like this. And that's it. So what I'll do now is do a full playthrough of the song to give you something to practice and play along to. Enjoy. And so that's the entirety of the lesson. If you found this tutorial useful, be sure to give it a like and leave a comment down below letting me know what you thought. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on all those notifications. And finally, if you want more tutorials covering songs by Ed Sheeran, be sure to click the card on the screen now to jump to all my other lessons. Happy holidays!